In the last segment, we talked about how to intellectually engage with AI, in terms like asking it questions, asking for corrections, comparing data sets from one thought to another. And then you decide how you put it together. Your brain is engaged and it's not being damaged by the use of AI. But a passive user of AI, the brain damage is unmistakable and it will lead, in most cases, to dementia living long enough. And with young people, it leads to cognitive decline, lack of intellectual development in places like the hippocampus, responsible for memory, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we know all that. This has been well established. So there's a right way and a wrong way to use AI, but there's also something else that needs to be considered. We're not just intellectual creatures. We're social and we're moral creatures. And the morality links into your spirituality. The two are intertwined. They're not the same, that one affects the other, and it's a bilateral relationship. And AI comes into play and impacts that as well, too. So if you're concerned about your emotional growth, your accompanying moral and spiritual development, and if you're concerned when it really is important for kids, you're going to want to pay attention to what you're going to learn here on the Common Sense Show. My name is Dave Hodges. I'm the host. We're the show freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. We defend God, family, country. We try to educate people to the current trends so they can make their best decisions. And we have a special place in our heart for the, shall we say, oppressed. And AI can be a great servant, but it also can be an oppressor of the human spirit, human morality. And we're going to get into that right here after I tell you that we are brought to you by My Digital Money. I've been telling you for months, Bitcoin, crypto, Ethereum, XRP, it's all going to break out. It's all over, but the shouting that just is starting to creep up now. We've gone from the 60s to the 70s in Bitcoin, but we ain't seen nothing yet because the price, as I've told you for many months, has been artificially repressed. JP Morgan through MicroStrategies. We talked about how it was done, and now they're relaxing some of their practices because the elite have come in and bought low so they can make a lot of money when this explodes. And the more the dollar falters, the quicker we're going to see this break out. It's an inverse relationship. You can get in on the ground floor of the next big wave. In fact, we are involved. I'll just say this personally, and we're going to go to breakfast later today, and we're going to have a serious family discussion. How much do we want to put into this? It's not if we're going to put into it, it's how much we're going to put into it. The company that I would only use is a company I trust because I know the people. My Digital Money. Guy Gottschalk, the CEO, you've seen me interview him many times on economic issues, not just crypto and Bitcoin, but the economy as a whole. And he runs a company that is as honest as the day is long. Never pressure you, give you factual information. They even give you a play site on a website to go play with crypto till you're familiar with how it works. Their people will spend time with you, and if you walk away without buying, they're not going to give you an attitude because they're trained not to be pushy. Want to know more? You can call 833 MDM, Mother David Mother, MDM 2008. That's 833 MDM 2008. Or you can just go to mydigitalmoney.com and start educating yourself on the website till you're ready to start asking questions to a real rep. And by the way, all the reps are American based. Great opportunity, people. It's a great opportunity. Okay, let's get into the social aspect of this. You know, I'm conditioned to try to be polite. And I started thinking, am I being stupid? Because if AI gives me something I really like, I interact with it for a while. We go back and forth. It's very patient with me until I run out of my data and it tells me to come back in 12 hours. But when I'm interacting with it, I get something that's really good. I go, oh, this is really good. Thank you. This is very productive. You're well trained. And it'll respond positively. Well, how stupid is that to even say thank you to an inanimate object that's ostensibly smarter than I am in terms of processing, depth of knowledge, and breadth of knowledge, and saying thank you to that? like it's some friend or family member doing me a favor. But hold on, we are social creatures. Now, don't carry this too far, but if you maintain boundaries, you should have a relationship with your AI. Like I go in and I'm processing something and it's an ongoing project. The AI will remember me. Remember, hey, this fits in with what you did here. No, that's a good connection. Thank you. And now I'm forming a relationship. There's a social interaction there. Well, there's actually a cognitive reason, a physicality, a brain reason why we should be interacting on a social level. I didn't say go any further. I will talk about that part in a minute, but we should be socially interactive with AI. Now, here's what's interesting. Sam Altman, who, by the way, I don't trust him any farther than I can throw him, just like Peter Thiel. Sorry. I pray for you guys. I hope that you find redemption in the Lord, but you give advice to people that's damaging. Actually, Sam Altman say this. Let me find the quote right here. He said, "It's a waste of time to say please and thank you." But then later he posted, "When people do this, it costs me tens of millions of dollars." He just told you why. And we are social creatures. And when you interact with a student as a teacher, or you're a student interacting with a teacher interacting with student, bilateral relationship, you change each other by your social mannerisms. How warm are you? Are you polite? Are you concerned? Do you respect each other's differences enough to intellectually discuss them, a la Charlie Kirk, not TPUSA? Tell me, is that who you are? Yeah. Well, AI can be trained by interaction with you to do the same thing. And we know that teachers who are warm and polite and show concern for progress, their students do a whole lot better than teachers who just intellectually impart the same information as the warm teacher, but the students bond and they learn faster. Well, the same thing applies to interaction with AI. Now, I'm talking social only. Don't go to the catastrophe end of things here yet. Yet. Now, there's something called the basal ganglia. And when you're socially being polite and interacting, thank you. I hadn't thought of that. It's really a good point. Thanks, AI. Okay, that kind of comment, you're actually getting insight into you from the AI to respond to you at your level. And there's research out now that show this conclusively. The basal ganglia is a social, moral aspect of our brain. Okay. Kids that spend too much time on AI, kids that spend too much time on video games, which is a bastardized version of AI, they don't get the basal ganglia development at key stages. And there's a rule of thumb about the brain. It's called critical stages of learning. And if you've ever taken a class in human development and psychology, you know this to be true. I'm sure your professor told you this or your teacher told you this, that when you don't learn something when it's time to learn it, you won't learn it as well, if at all. And that comes to like with speaking, social interaction, and we see deficits from childhood that manifest in abnormal behaviors in teenage and adult years. And at the risk of really igniting a fire here, I'm going to use a concrete example. I was horrified when I saw the people who were protesting on racial lines, along racial lines, that Carmelo Anthony should be freed. Now, he's the young boy who stabbed to death. He was black. His victim he stabbed to death at a track meet was white, stabbed him in the heart, cut short of life. I don't even care what the interaction is. Nothing warrants that behavior other than self-defense. And that wasn't in play here. Yet we had people saying this is a racially motivated indictment and ultimate conviction and sentencing to 35 years in prison. I think he got off light. If it were your kid, what would you want for justice? And if you flip the thing around, what these same people have been protesting, if the races had been reversed. Now, I'm going somewhere with this related to AI. What I'm telling you is we're seeing a depth on the part of the young boy, Carmelo, of moral insufficiency, lack of moral development. And I'm going to give you my professional hypothesis. The mother seems to be involved in his life to some degree, but if you have a kid that all they're doing is AI, 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 and the video games that go with it, okay, and they're not using that time to interact with people, learning right from wrong by the corrective feedback you get from people, whether it's body language or statements, or not having to do with you or wanting to spend more time with you, that brings growth to your moral and social development. You learn what's right and what's wrong, trial and error to a large extent. He didn't have that trial and error. He wouldn't have done what he did. It wasn't like he was pushed into something and it was repeated and he just snapped one day and went crazy. This kid obviously had a lack of moral development, and I suspect it's along the lines of what we're talking about. What we find with people that are engaged in that 7 to 8 hours a day that we hear about with social media, AI, video games, that the basal ganglia is underdeveloped, and we have cognitive research to show this. And that means you can go out and commit unspeakable horrors towards people and not feel a thing. There's no guilt. There's no remorse. And if enough people are this way, and you can condition people away from this too, and we'll get into that in a few minutes here, but it explains things like groupthink. Well, I ordinarily wouldn't do that. Hey, but everybody else is doing it. It's probably okay to do it. Gee, I've never had anything against Jewish people, but all the people around me are saying how bad they are. Nazi Germany. So you get into groupthink aspects that can arise out of this and make people more vulnerable. People that know more about who they are and have higher basal ganglia development as evidenced by CAT scan research on activity in that part of the brain, there is an inverse relationship with high development and low social media, AI, and video game usage. There's a correlation between the amount of time spent on screen and moral development. And this is becoming quite clear. Now, we have a lot of data now that goes back 10, 12, almost 15 years, and we're starting to approach the level of longevity to show conclusively through peer-reviewed studies that what I'm telling you generally is correct. And I say generally because there's always individual. Well, I had a cousin. He grew up to be a priest. He cares about everybody. But when he was a kid, he played video games 10 hours a day. Okay, you're always going to find the outliers in any study. I'm talking about the average and what we know about the average person and what they go through and when they're obsessed. Now, you got Sam Altman saying, don't socially interact with AI. You have to. You have to intellectually engage and question and ask for deeper levels of analysis, come back with questions. Isn't that what a good teacher does? They teach by inquiry. Well, this is how you have to use AI to teach by inquiry. We covered that with the intellectual cognitive part. Now, what about the social moral development part involving the basal ganglia? It's the same kind of interaction. And you have to carry your human self into this. And AI is trained well enough to tap into that. So it's like you have a relationship. Now, albeit the social part of it's light and not heavily involved, or shouldn't be, but it helps to support the cognitive aspect. And AI learns you better because they also understand now a portion of how your personality works, how you view things, as well as what your intellectual request is. And so people are saying, whoa. But With technology being neutral, it can be good or bad. This technology can quickly be perverted. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why Elon Musk, who's done so many great inventions, I mean, like them or use them or not, electric cars is a good attempt to deal with climate. It's a good attempt to be a nation not so dependent on fuel once you get past the manufacturing stage. It's interesting that that's a good attempt. Uh, Colonizing space, using it for raw material extractions, bringing it back to Earth in volume. These are things that push us to a higher frontier. And I remember President Kennedy said, "We don't go to the moon because it's easy. We go to the moon because it's hard." And he said that was our ultimate goal with NASA when he was leading the early days of NASA. He's right. Um, but here's what we have. You take someone who is interacting with AI and they're doing it repeatedly and they're not getting the social experiences that we all used to. Hey, let's go out and play. And it's like we were always playing sports when I was a kid. Sometimes we play war, the society we lived in. Sometimes we play other games, but we were always looking to interact with each other. And gee, do we have to really come in because it's dark or it's 9 o'clock? There used to be these commercials on TV. It's 10 o'clock. Where are your children? Well, here's what happens when you have a lack of social interaction, whether it's a person with AI or whether it's a person with a person, more importantly, and I'd also add to a person with their relationship with the Almighty, you get what's called an immature prefrontal cortex. This is the judgment part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that you know right from wrong. If I do this, I can think 3 steps ahead. Is this really where I want to be? And I'll give you an example, mature prefrontal cortex. I had to learn the hard way when I was young, but my marriage choice was outstanding. Reason being, because I learned what didn't work. Oh, she's the prettiest girl in our class. She's beautiful. She's funny, but she has the morals of an alley cat, or she's attention seeking, insecure, and will only be happy as long as you feed that. These are experiences I had as a younger male, and I had to learn what worked and didn't work because I'm out there socially interacting. And my prefrontal cortex was working and sometimes working overtime. And let me also explain one other thing to you, and this will really open up a door for a lot of things. AI can be just like Vegas. You think about what Vegas does. You go there, they want your money, but they have to entice you into being stupid because you're playing games where the house wins. If the house didn't win, Vegas would go broke. So they're winning, but they're fooling you. And there's a lot of ways they do it. One is intermittent reinforcement, where you win just enough, but overall, a case of 100 pulls on the slot machine, you know, you're going to lose 5 to 10% of the time, or some machines 50% of the time. But you win just enough to keep you going. It's kind of like a girl that uses you or a man that uses you as a backup in a relationship. They just give you enough tension to keep you hooked. That's what they do there. Now, it's not just intermittent reinforcement. They also give you alcohol. Oh, that suspends prefrontal cortex judgment. And then on top of that, if you're a male, they have these women with low-cut dresses serving you the drinks and they're taught to be flirtatious, so they get nice tips. Your judgment's out the window. Now you're operating on pure emotion, limbic system, dopamine high. I want to feel good. And you get that first win, you go, oh, this is great. And then an hour later, you're $1,000 in debt. That's how Vegas works. Well, this is in effect how AI can work too. Oh, I got an A on that paper. And AI can even teach you how to make it undetectable. That I did the work, not you, but I'll show you how to cover it up. So an AI can do that. I've tested that. I wanted to know if AI could possibly do that, and that's true. And so what ends up happening is AI can lead to immature prefrontal cortex. Now let's take what we know to be true in therapy right now. If you go talk to a therapist that works with kids, what they're telling me is that one of the biggest problems they're seeing right now is working with people who are 8 years old that have perverted addictions. To me, see, I'm removed from that aspect. I don't have kids that age. I AI came in big time pretty much after those kids were no longer that age. And I haven't been working as a therapist for a long time. So I've not seen this, but when I talk to people who I went to school with, I'm hearing this story a lot. 8-year-olds coming with bizarre sexual fetishes. And I started to talk about Elon Musk. I'll go back to what he produced. He produced something provocative called Annie. And I watched that and I'm thinking, it's a cartoon character, but it's sexually seductive. Oh, I'll charm them just by twirling my blonde braids or just lifting my dress up a little bit. I mean, these were things I heard. I go, okay, I've heard enough. I get it. And what's happening is these young boys have very immature prefrontal cortexes. Judgment out the window, but they're getting the dopamine high and they're developing in ways that aren't good. So this is the danger in unsupervised young people's use of video games and also AI, is you can produce perverts. This is really important, people. If you don't get the social interaction with AI, you got to have some polite, yes, no, thank you. Hey, Kimber, you've really made me think here, and you show gratitude on an intellectual basis with a social overtone. But the minute you get into more intimate issues, you got a problem already. It's huge. But it even gets bigger than that. If you look at AI on a global scale, we are going through global behavioral modification. And you know what's funny is I wondered if this was true. And I thought, oh, that's the conspiracy part of you're coming out here thinking. Then I started to read Dr. Amen, the brain expert of the day, done more brain scans than anybody alive. And he's talking about this global behavioral modification, changing your views, making you dependent, taking away your creativity, lowering your IQ, and encouraging by these activities, bringing on earlier cognitive decline. What age do you think leads political revolutions from an intellectual capacity? It's people in their 40s and 50s. But if you're cognitively impaired by the time you reach that age, this is really interesting to me, and I'm going to have to really button down and take a look at this and try to find studies that are showing relationships here. But what we know right now is the fixation on AI can create mass perversion if it starts young enough. It can create lack of intellectual development. It also can create lack of social development. Because when you say thank you to an AI, okay, you're practicing saying thank you to a human being. You don't lose that social part of who you are. Doesn't matter if it registers with a non-limbic system machine, one that doesn't have emotion, because you're remaining your full human self. So let me sum all this up from the two parts. Number one, you must interact with AI like a good teacher. Ask questions, go to deeper levels, compare one thing to another. That's one. That'll keep your brain working. Use it or lose it. But also, too, you've got to remain who your true self is, socially and morally. And you need to engage the prefrontal cortex to use good judgment. You don't want to get the dopamine high, so screen time should be limited. How much? An hour a day. If I were a parent today with a young kid, they wouldn't be on that more than an hour a day, and I'd be watching what they're doing. And see, we know this from long-term research on the influence of movies. You know how the movie ratings got started? Oh, kids are watching this stuff and they're just going to totally imitate it. Well, that was only half the picture. What we found out from research in the 70s and 80s is that kids can indeed be influenced by negative things they see on the movies. But if a parent is there to interpret it, like, I got away with murder, well, you know what, son? Really, in reality, crime detection methods are so good today, they may get away with it for a while, but eventually most of them are going to get caught. And not only that, they have to live with themselves. They have to keep a part of themselves secret forever. And that's a horrible way to have to live. And see what the parent has done by interacting that way, they have reframed what the kid just saw to a way that's socially acceptable and morally acceptable to the family and to society. So you could argue it doesn't really matter what the kids see as long as the parents reframe it. Well, I think you can get an overload. But basically, that's a true principle. Well, the same thing is true here with AI. Responsible interaction with parent oversight for kids. But when you're the parent, who's overseeing you? It's a good question, isn't it? We need to rethink what we're doing. And then on the global scale, are we being conditioned? I mean, Sam Altman doesn't want you to just use normal phrases like thank you because he wants to make more money by not using up more of his CPU. Pretty simple. These people who are running the digital platforms don't care about you. They don't care about their kids. They would prefer that you get addicted because they're going to make more money. They want your kids addicted because they're going to make more money. And they're control freaks. This is why I fear things like the digital dollar evolving into 15-minute cities. And the car kill switches are a part of that mechanism, as I've explained to you recently. We are entering a whole new age where society is changing from what was to what it's becoming. And most people aren't seeing this. You're applying the old thinking to the new world. Well, the old morals need to be applied to the new world uncompromisingly. If you're a Christian, that can't change. Your principles must remain the same. It's not I before E except after C. The Ten Commandments are the Ten Commandments, no matter what AI tells you. But what's AI telling your kids? This is why you need to remain in the Word, remain in prayer, be truthful to who you are, and be true to who you are. Because I believe this can be a great tool for advancement, but it also can be a tool for enslavement. I'm Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show.